Okay, so this is the background to the next conversation. Nigeria's budgeted 2016 fiscal appropriations on $38 a barrel. Right now, crude oil is selling around $40 a barrel, stepping below that briefly, flirting again with $41 a barrel. So things are very volatile at the base of that chart. If you had opportunity to look at it, oil prices around the world, no thanks to a number of reasons, from geopolitical tensions and the strong dollar, weak economy in Europe and in China, Japan trying to escape recession, Brazil and faraway Latin America falling into recession. So the world is in economic troubles. Now Nigeria has its own head scratching to do. The president, the CEO, is the one in the middle of the street right now. On his left, the Nigeria Labour Congress says subsidy should be kept. The World Bank at the other side of the street, including a lot of others, are pushing the president to the other side, saying you need to cut this $35 billion that the country has spent in 5 years to subsidize domestic crude, also domestic oil consumption. And these are the reasons that the World Bank rolled out yesterday, says falling naira, the inflation, rising demand, crude oil theft, and corruption at the center of the subsidy payment has ramped up Nigeria's total subsidy budget in 5 years to 7 trillion naira. That's far larger than the 2016 budget. So the conclusion, the World Bank says the fiscal cost of fuel subsidy is really, really high. Let's bring in Dolapo Oni, who is the head of energy research at EcoBank Development Corporation, to answer the question for us. It's a double barrel question, Dolapo. When and how should President Buhari decide?
Thank you for having me on your show, Bosin. And really, like you said, it's a very difficult question for the president, because you see, the thing about subsidies, it's not a simple removal that needs to be done. I mean, if you just take away the subsidy as it is right now, as we speak today, the subsidy on petrol is 6 naira per liter. So it looks like a small amount, which we can just add back to the amount and say petrol is now selling for 95, 96 naira per liter. But that's not all. The price of crude oil changes every day. The price of the products will change every day. So will the government also be changing prices every day and monitoring filling stations across the country to ensure that they all sell at that price every day? It's going to be quite difficult. So ideally, what should be going through his mind right now will be a full deregulation of the downstream sector.
Hold the thought. Hold the thought there, Dolapo. I'm sorry to cut in there. You just mentioned something. Should and will the government and its agencies check petrol prices every day? You and I know that in some countries, even here on the African continent, retail prices at the gas stations changes, like in South Africa, in Kenya, in a few other countries. They change their petrol prices, retail prices to the local consumers, depending on the volatility in oil price at the global space. What makes it difficult to do such thing in Nigeria? Perhaps Nigerians wouldn't mind if I buy petrol 100 naira per liter in January. In February, I get to pay 96 naira for that. Why? I'm having 4 naira change, and I could put that in 30 days, make 1 month, and I could just say, well, I got to use that for something.
Well, you know, that would come with a fully deregulated downstream market, which is what you have in South Africa. But if I could bring in Kenya here, for instance, in Kenya, they also don't have the subsidy on PMS. But what they have is still a regulated market, in the sense that they still set prices for PMS every month. So the government then not just set for this Nairobi, they set for all the states and all the regions in Kenya, because they recognize that there are transport costs, there are other costs that you will incur to distribute fuel across the country. So they know that the price in Eldoret is different from the price in, say, Mombasa, or the price in Nairobi. You know, so now that would mean we would also have to do exactly the same thing, because when we're talking about subsidy, we're not just talking about subsidy being what the extra over what we pay, but even the cost of distributing across the country. That in itself is a form of subsidy in itself, which is covered in bridging. So that would also have to go, but that would only go under deregulation.
Okay, so the question is, When should the president decide?
Well, yesterday would have been a good time to start, but clearly right now I think we have no option but to kick it off right away. We have to essentially deregulate downstream as soon as possible. I don't want to put a specific date because clearly it's something we should have done. In fact, maybe even January this year when we had maybe just about 90 kobo subsidy on fuel, which we didn't do then. So we need to do that now.
Dolapo, at what point, this is still one of the arguments on the street, at what point should subsidy be removed? When oil was at $140, $120 a barrel, or when it's at $40 a barrel? When is the good time to do it? During the plenty period or during the farming period?
I think we should remove it now, during the time when we don't have the revenue to sustain that payment. Money that should be going into other critical sectors to sustain jobs, to build infrastructure. Out of the little funds we have, we shouldn't be using it to pay for subsidy. People should also use that as an opportunity to conserve. You know, we talk about energy conservation, the amount of fuel they use as well, because prices will have to go up. So now will be a good time. And then again, recognizing the fact that as oil prices recover over the long term, the cost of products will also go up as well. So then again, the government revenue will also increase as well too. So if there's a need to bring it back, they can think about it. But ideally, we shouldn't even ever consider bringing it back again.
I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, Dolapo. If President Buhari decides tonight to remove petrol subsidies, how do you think 160 million Nigerians will react?
First of all, 160 million Nigerians who have not been able to get fuel over the last few weeks, who have been struggling at various filling stations, at least up until recently, to get adequate level of fuel, I think they would take the news mixed. It will be mixed, but most of them would understand.
That's a politically correct answer you just given me there. Because just decided to say, because yesterday, and it's been reported in the media today, and since overnight, that the Labour Congress says the president shouldn't touch the button, the subsidy button. So, the Nigeria Labour Congress is the one who calls out the workers, well, workers, if you want to put it that way, and say, look, we're against this. Do you think if the president removes subsidy tonight, President Buhari, if he does that tonight, tomorrow morning, do you think that the Nigeria Labour Congress will get enough hundreds and thousands of Nigerians who will go on the streets carrying placards and say, no, President Buhari, we do not support this?
You see, the thing is, again, like I said, subsidy removal in itself alone is not the answer here. And that is why if subsidy removal is the plan, I don't think it will solve everything. Full deregulation is what is needed. Now, full deregulation and also provision of some economic palliatives. We've talked about 5,000 naira for vulnerable members of society. We've talked about, trying to bring school feeding, and maybe some other palliatives need to be thought about to it sort of mitigate or reduce the impact of higher prices on people. But currently, as we stand, as we speak today, the subsidy on fuel will not increase prices too much. And even without the subsidy, don't forget, in various parts of Lagos, in various parts of Nigeria, people are already paying 140, 160 naira per liter. So, yes, Labour needs to probably be dialogued with a little bit more, but that decision has to be taken now. And today will be a good day as any.
Well, Dolapo, 3 years ago, January 2012, the then president, Goodluck Jonathan, removed petrol subsidy. What he announced as the palliative for that was the SureP, which was a subsidy removal, social kind of safety net, as it were, what you call the SureP. So if President Buhari is going to press the button and take subsidy, petrol subsidy out of this economy, give me a list of 1, 2, 3 perhaps that you think he should announce along with that surgery, major one that we've got to do with subsidy to cool things on one hand, while some fake folks go home and scratch the back of their head and say, well, at last it's off the street.
Okay, just straight to the point. I think the key thing, again, we must recognize is that part of why the 2012 effort to remove subsidy didn't work again was that over time, Nigerians have built significant amount of distrust with government ability to manage funds at the center. And of course, we see all that happening with all the various amounts that we're hearing over the news being misplaced or misspent or misappropriated. So even then, the worry was that all the funds that would have gone to subsidy or would go into shopping, how would they be effectively managed and tracked and all that? So I think a lot of information has to go out there again towards how whatever is being saved, what is it going to be spent on? That's one. And then two, I think there must be some sort of direct, cash benefits or cash transfers to vulnerable members of society or areas where we have quite a large amount of low-income households who will be susceptible to prices, these changes in prices, because it will affect transport, it will affect food prices. There might have to be some sort of direct cash transfers, and to some extent, it may not be a very large amount like we're currently considering a 5,000 naira cash transfer. It might be something a lot smaller. And we have BVN, we have various ways that the banking system is trying to ensure that we can actually get a lot more details on individual people, and then some of these people actually do not even have bank accounts. So other forms will have to come up, but there's no way we will probably avoid that sort of system.
So do you think, Dolapo, that, so, okay, fine. So the subsidy is removed, President Buhari and the rest of the cabinet, they will have to take that decision together, but the buck stops at his table. So he says, well, sorry, folks, 160 million people will be returning about 2,000 naira to each one, 2,500 naira to each Nigerian, and that will go to your bank account. I would be grateful to get 2,500 recharge cards, some things like that. I could go buy a few more liters of petrol. So do you think it's going to work like you had in Venezuela, in Libya at some point when oil proceeds are distributed directly to the people of the country, the citizens?
No, I don't think it will work that way. I don't think it will work that way. I think we would have to create a system to ensure that it's really those that need it that get it. It probably would have to involve a system to ensure that it's really those low-income households that get it. How that will work, I can't say at the moment, but I'm sure when we think more about it, we probably can come up with a better solution to achieve that.
So I'm going to ask you the final...
Not necessarily work like Venezuela's case, which up until today, I'm not sure that has really been very effective.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the last difficult question. Okay, so if we're not going to go that route, that means my and your argument that the president should have removed the subsidy yesterday, Tuesday, wouldn't work for the next week, Tuesday. Looking at all the frameworks you think should be put in place before President Buhari decides.
Well, yeah,
that's a difficult one.
Partly why I think that decision hasn't happened is because they've been thinking about this as well. So I imagine that by the time they decide they want to do it, they probably have also crafted a method to achieve some sort of economic palliatives for the vulnerable members of society that will be affected by the move. So maybe that's why it has taken this time. But the day they decide to do it, that will be the way they should go.
Okay, thank you very much, Dolapo. But don't forget, whenever that decision is taken, you and I are one of those vulnerable. So don't take my name off the list of the vulnerable Nigerians. Don't worry about the white collar, blue collar thing. We're all vulnerable here. Okay, thank you very much. Do have a great Wednesday. Dolapo Oni, Head of Energy Research. We appreciate that conversation with you. When we come back after the break, budgets will be 6 trillion in 2016. There are a lot of issues about the oil price, but will the stock market that's fallen more than 20%, around 21% in 2015, be part of that? The bond market and treasury bills have seen a significantly positive year. Bonds have returned close to 15%. Treasury bills about 12%. Stock market a negative 21%. Why should I buy stock in 2016? That's the conversation we're having after the break. You don't want to miss that, do you?